thought we would.
Alright.
Okay, because we have a lot of new people, I'm just gonna go around and let everyone introduce themselves and then kind of just go over our norms a little bit, and then we'll jump into policy. So just so you know, it is being recorded. We'll take the screen off, and so if you want to be able to see everything digitally, it's here. We'll make correct adjustments and edits as we go, but you also have a paper copy in front of you, and I can get you more if you need it. So
And that's the same. Okay,
yep.
perfect.
I am Lynn Pasley. I'm the assistant superintendent. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm John Sullivan, community grandfather of a student that attends the district.
Michelle Thompson, trustee and parent and grandparent.
Ramona Grissom, taxpayer.
On that too.
Dave Quimby, trustee, zone 4.
Heather Hamilton, school counselor and Apple parent.
Christy Mitchell, teacher at Apple, and my kids went through, and I graduated here too, but big time, visit our moms.
Doug, parent.
Nate Hutter, parent.
Kim Teka, parent, taxpayer, all the above. Aren't we all?
Cherish Hansen, parent, taxpayer, also a teacher in another district. And yeah, friend.
And I'm Olivia Jones, the clerk of the board.
So just when we first started establishing policy committee and having people come, it is open to the public, but our goal is really that we're focused on doing what's right for kids and advocating for our parents and advocating, absolutely, you can come in. Not yet. Yeah. Advocating for our parents and for students and for staff. So we do allow all voices to be heard. We do a really good job of making sure that everyone feels valued while they're here, and we are just really appropriate while we're talking and giving opinion, and there are oftentimes differing opinions, but the goal is that everybody can speak up and we're making decisions in a collaborative, consensus way. So we will go ahead and get started. So update from our last meeting. We worked on the policy that accompanies the MOU. There has been some rumor that the MOU was not moved forward, but it continues. We have the one that we currently have runs out in August, and then we have a new one coming in August. So the MOU is in place. This policy is just accompanying that MOU so that there's just more procedures in place and more protections for parents. At our last meeting, we left it with, we were going to take the draft policy that's in front of you, we were going to take it to our state council, Amy White. She represents districts across the state of Idaho, and so I did reach out to her Thursday and Friday. She got back to me on Monday. I sent her a copy of the policy. She then asked several hours later for a copy of the MOU, so she's still working through it. She said that this policy accompanies some additional new legislation that potentially will be coming into play in July, and so she just wants to make sure we're covered. As of 6 o'clock, I have not received an email with any feedback. So we talked about our next phase of this. Once we have a draft policy done, our next step typically is we send it out to parents for the whole community for input, and then it comes to the board. But we can either, at this point, continue to add updates to the policy, and then we're going to take it to the board for input just so they can kind of see the direction of this policy before we send it out to the community. We can table things waiting for Amy White to get back to us. We have several options of what we want to do moving forward, so we just kind of have to talk through what we want next steps to be as we wait. It was a community member that asked for it to be sent to Amy White, so that's where we left it at the last meeting. So we're kind of just waiting for some additional guidance specific to some new legislation around parent rights.
Which is typical. I mean, we usually send some policies, I would say, to legal counsel. If I can add to what you're saying, I wanted, since we have so many people here, there's almost no reason for me to show up anymore. Because we don't do this as trustees, we do this as Ramona, right? Because we don't act in part for the board or a voice of the board when we're here. We simply are sitting at this committee because nobody wants to write policy, and that's the number one thing of the board. Right, that's our number one as a board trustee. That's our number one job. So just so everybody's clear that when I'm sitting here just as Ramona, paying taxes, kids going through the school. That's it. It's not, cause it all still has to go for the board, everything that
Right.
happens here has to go to the board could decide to write something totally different and throw
Mhm.
this away. They won't, but, you know, that is a possibility, so I just wanted people to understand that I'm not in control of this, and I'll speak for Michelle, she's not in control of it either. Just that when we came, there was some things happening that put the district in a really bad position because the policies weren't up to date. There was a legal obligation for them to be up to date, so that's really how it started. The prior superintendent was like, here, you two are good at this, you two do this, and that's really how it started, and everybody's happier that they have an input with the budget and
Right.
curriculum and being able to voice, you know, hear everybody's voice, those that are in the district, parents of the district on the policy, so that's really what spurred all of this. I know sometimes people think other things, but I just wanted to make that clear. I'm not here as a board member, I'm just
The
doing
other-
stuff others don't wanna do.
The other thing to add to that is, this really has just been a brainstorming session, so policies will come up and they can come up. I've had committee members request a policy to come up. There's been something that's happened at the district level where we need something. And there have been times where we have given multiple views to the board, and so it's not because the group of people that participate have opposing views, so we present all of those views to the board. So this really is just a kind of a think tank group. And we've reached out to our local lawyer, we've reached out to the state. So the goal is that we're just writing something that we're all comfortable with the idea that it's gonna go to the board for input. And so we've had different people then comment on that, and so whenever we send out the draft policies for parents, we get a lot of feedback oftentimes, and so we'll make some tweaks based on what parents and committee members are asking. So we really do try to make an honest effort to let all voices be heard and hear from people. If they can't be here, we're still trying to represent the whole populace and not just this small group of people. And I feel like we've done a really good job of trying to make it open to everybody, so whatever means necessary or mode that you feel most comfortable with. In the sense of giving feedback, the survey's anonymous, we don't know who has sent it. Some people will give us their name, some people don't, it's all fine. But the goal has always been to as many people can give feedback specific to the policy. So if we don't agree, that's fine too, because we'll put those, we'll represent all of that to the board, and then the board gets to kind of decide how they're navigating, you know. So that's kind of where we stand. So with this policy, we just have to talk about what we want next steps to be. Regarding, we are still waiting, and I have not had any additional guidance, so.
Did we all feel that the policy was complete after the last meeting, or was there more information that we needed to include in the policy?
One person asked if we would look at the pros and the cons list, so we talked about
That's right.
that.
Okay.
There was another draft policy that somebody else submitted that I don't think we looked at, if there was language specific to that. So just so you guys have some context, I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking, but I just want you to have context. This policy doesn't really exist. We even had to create its own name. And so some of the people that have participated in policy, I asked them if they would start doing some investigation on just different policies that are out there. So we got 3 separate. We took one and decided we'd start that one with the draft, and then we're just merging different languages that we've seen from other policy and just verbiage that we liked. And so I know we went through one, and then, but Jacqueline, am I accurate that we have another one we still need to possibly include, as far as, I don't know that we looked at it?
In of the 3 draft policies? I
Did we
think
look at all
2
3?
weeks ago we read all 3.
Okay.
So I think we looked at them all, but we
Okay.
can look at them
Okay.
further.
So the idea was that we were merging and,
It seems pretty comprehensive. I mean, from what I was able to find, a lot of school districts don't have a policy like this.
Right.
They just go by the MOU, so.
Right. we definitely struggled trying to find a
Yeah.
procedural policy that existed from other districts, just so we could have a frame of reference.
Well, part of the, I don't think it's a problem, but the reality is the policy needs to be in place so that the MOUs can adopt to the policy, not the MOU is dictating what the policy will be within the district, because it's not an assurance. Is that, oh, okay. It's not an assurance that we will forever and always be with Heritage Health or other mental health providers, and you know, if the policy opens the door to have others come in, then they've got guidelines to follow before they just come in. That's the purpose of having the policy. This has always been kind of the cart before the horse, and so we need to get the horse back in front of the cart. But yeah, pros and cons. Those were, okay.
Did we have that, in the drive somewhere where we can pull it up, or do we know where it came
We
from?
can pull it up on the drive.
Oh, yeah. Do you need a keyboard too?
It was listed on this,
Oh, on
one of
the,
the 3 policies, the one that says outside counseling services policy at the top.
Okay.
It was in
There we go.
Page 2.
Right there.
okay.
So, and again, I'm just one voice in this, so I did raise a concern about putting pros and cons in a policy, just because I feel like we've worked really hard to make it more just the facts and procedural and less of the fluff language. So if this is something, my recommendation would be we would do a consideration doc that we include as part of that packet of things to consider, but we really tried to stay away from subjective language, because on both fronts, whatever the pros are is subjective to, if you agree with it, the cons are subjective if you don't. So that was my recommendation, but I am just one person, so, but we have tried to ferret out all of that, so the policies haven't been really long, and it's been just really factual and kind of short and sweet, but.
Yeah, that is something the committee's had a lot of feedback on, this people don't like if the policies get too long, and that's for sure.
Well, and some of that is a part of the informed consent. That they go through all the advantages and disadvantages during the intake process of cost and everything else like that. It seems pretty subjective to me, but I do think that a lot of this would be covered in the informed consent with the provider.
So,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Some of the parents that I talked to about this also sort of felt like maybe it was a bit much, and that, sort of to your point with the informed consent, that maybe the only parts that needed to be covered were maybe the parts that wouldn't be covered by Heritage Health, which would be directly related to the school district. So like, what are the potential cons for a student receiving counseling at the school? Like, if other students are noticing, or if they got to be bullied, is there a potential for there to be some kind of discord between the district and the parents? So maybe instead of doing like a full pros and cons, we could put on the parental rights part, just add number 3 in there on the list, or down at the bottom, I'm sorry, that just says like, given that there are some potential negative outcomes, and then maybe list a couple, and then lead into the sentence about parents or students can discontinue services at any time.
Didn't we say that in here?
We
We
did.
said
Well, we
that
did say they
second
can
part, but
discontinue,
maybe just add
yeah,
a
at
lead-in
any time.
sentence that says like, due to the potential for negative outcomes, i.e. bullying of the student by peers for receiving counseling, discord between parents/legal guardians and staff, parents and or legal guardians and students who have reached the age of majority may discontinue services at any time. So just add like a little disclaimer instead of doing the full list.
Why would students be bullied for accessing care when that's confidential?
If they're being pulled out of class at a non-major student might notice.
We have students that come and go from classrooms all the time, whether it's for a restroom break or getting pulled out for reading services or special education services or tutoring. Nobody keeps tabs on what a student's doing. Now if a student discloses that to another student, that's the only way that they would know.
Yeah, this isn't coming from me, it's just another parent who had a student receiving counseling who expressed.
Do you feel like, can you scroll up a little bit, Michelle, please?
I mean, I think that could be clarified and just described in what the sessions would look like.
Well, what I was wondering is, so that part where we have that packet, would it be worthwhile to put like, the next part of that is a consideration doc, and so those are like, here's the questions to ask, here's the things to think of, like, so it's an informational for parents, so that it's not necessarily leading, but it's here's all the things to consider. That's what I was thinking, is it could be a consideration that's just part of, to your point, the intake process, that these are all the things to consider, you know what I mean?
I know in my schools, that I've taught at for a long time, I taught 4th grade and 2nd grade and kindergarten, and it really, when a student has received services from Heritage Health, They've only been able, because of time, to come to our building twice a week for half days, and it all goes through the parents. Every single thing goes through the parents. And then the Heritage Health employee always contacted me as the teacher of what is the most appropriate time of the day that for this student to leave the classroom. We want it to be very discreet, and we want it to be comfortable for the student walking in and out. And I, as a teacher, was always aware of what time of day and what he might be or she might be missing during that time. And I teach at a very low income, high trauma school, so this is very common where I'm at. And I haven't seen kids tease or taunt, maybe catch on to their leaving, but like you said, there's so much movement within schools. They switch classrooms for reading time and math time and PE and art, and that they're really, it's not obvious that elementary school students are leaving anyway.
I guess my question would be is what would be the harm if just putting this disclaimer into the policy eases the parents, if they voice this in her group that this is their concern, what would be the harm of putting that in there?
I think a policy is not supposed to be maybe so subjective. A policy is just a regular little thing. I mean, if you wanted to, like, I mean, I've seen just a lot of, I work in healthcare, and so we do a ton of policies in healthcare. And I've never seen like a pro and con list
not
on
the pro
that.
and con.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that's
no,
just kind of a nice subjective thing. I think that's the thing to maybe get things started as to how to look at your policy. And if you wanted to do a pro and con list and add it to the information packet, I think that's because it's super subjective.
Yeah, it wasn't
And-
the pro and con list. The question was back to the disclaimer.
But it's a subjective, yeah.
To
But it's
the
a
disclaimer
subjective
that parents feel like somebody put in black and white that what you say, we stand behind parents in black and white, makes the parent feel comfortable.
Well, we already
And I
have.
think that's
I thought
what's
that was
being-
in
I
here.
think having it in it as an
Stop.
information handout
Yeah.
as one of the required
Well-
documents instead of in the policy does make sense.
Yeah.
That seems to make sense.
To do what?
More
What did
of
you
a-
say? I'm sorry.
So your suggestion to, instead of including it in the policy, to put it as a separate document that is not
So
part
is
of the
it part
policy?
of,
I think
is it
that
our
makes sense.
age in here, if you have
Well, I
that?
think we're getting two things mixed up. I think we're talking about the little pro and con bullet points, and then we're also discussing a paragraph or a couple of sentences that Jacqueline actually read. So the sentences that she read, the disclaimer, I feel is appropriate to be in the policy if it's gonna make parents, whether we agree that the kids are bullied, not bullied, that's beyond the point. If the parent says, this will make me feel better about this, if you put this in there, why would we not do it is my question.
Do we not have an anti-bully policy already?
Yeah, we do, but it has nothing to do with mental health. And if
It's
people,
still bullying though, right?
yeah, but if the parent, if it makes the parent feel comfortable, we wouldn't put it in there? Why not?
Well, if we're saying that, well,
Why would we not put it in there to make the parent feel
What is
comfortable?
the paragraph we're talking
Yeah.
about? Cause I
Say
thought we
it
were gonna
again.
put that in
I'm
there.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can you read
I
it
can
again?
email it to you too if you wanna put on.
It was just up here, I saw it up there a second ago, I think.
Oh, did you?
I don't think
Parents, oh yeah, parents and their legal guardians and students who have reached the age of majority may discontinue services at any time.
Right.
I think
think
I would say, yeah, leave
that's
that.
fine.
Is that
Yeah.
also on Heritage Health or whoever? I would think that's also on
anybody.
their
We
forms.
said parental permission may be revoked at any time and for any reason without any negative consequences to the student, parent, or family
Yeah.
receiving. Are you suggesting more of a disclaimer? Is that what, I'm confused, I guess.
Yeah, I guess me too. Sorry.
Yeah, what I was discussing was putting something at the beginning of that sentence, to keep it in the policy or, potentially
What
move
I-
it to a.
What I think would be appropriate at this point, because we're not in agreement, is we're just gonna put it on the policy. We can highlight it in red, green, blue, I don't care what color. We can take it to the board and we can ask the board members their perspective on whether or not they'd like to have this disclaimer or this much information within the policy.
Yeah, can we get
Would-
clarification of what we're
Oh, yeah,
actually
yeah,
I don't
discussing?
even know what you're talking
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Jacqueline.
So on the, I'm trying to make sure I'm showing in the right spot, we scroll up just a little, whoever's in control of what.
That'd be me.
Okay, so I don't know. So if you scroll down to parental rights,
Keep going. Parental.
We're done.
oh, maybe we are in parental rights.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the parental
Oh, I see
rights
where-
section. You see
okay.
where we're at?
Yes. Okay, so on the part after where it says parents and or legal guardians.
Okay.
Yep, so that paragraph where the mouse is.
Yep.
So adding to the beginning of that, due to the potential for negative outcomes, i.e. bullying of the student by peers for receiving counseling, discord between parents/legal guardians and LJSD staff.
Okay, I'm still at the very
Sorry,
beginning.
I just got it. Due to the potential of negative outcomes, and then parentheses, i.e. bullying of the student by peers for receiving counseling. Comma. Discord between parents/legal guardians and LJSD staff, and parentheses. And then lowercase p, parents and legal guardians have the right to discontinue services.
Would you guys be also comfortable with, I can work on that pro and con list like as an information as part of the packet, and we can have that when we take it to the board, it accompanies that as well as far as that intake of just I'll do it as a consideration doc.
But it needs to be informative and not subjective, so.
I'll try to write it through an
Informative would be,
Here's
informative
questions to
would
ask.
be, this is a 30-minute session.
Right.
That would occur during the school day. That your student would be either walked to the office or escorted down. This is visible during the school day. That's factual. Subjective is, your student might get bullied. I'm not comfortable with inferring that our students bully.
So I'll
Students with
write a
mental health
things to
conditions?
consider doc,
I mean,
and
students definitely
then,
bully students with mental health
Right,
conditions.
but then we would be covered under our bullying policy.
But the parents signing their kid.
Yeah, just that
Let's have a referral.
like in the packet of all the things that you need to
Right.
be aware of policy-wise.
and I can bring it to the board, but also bring it to this team and we can wordsmith it, and if a few of you are comfortable with helping me, I can send it out and have you guys help me wordsmith some of that. Is there anybody that would be willing to, I can send it out and help me?
Oh, that would
I
be
could
good.
help
Chris
you.
said she would,
Me too.
Kim said she would, said she would.
I would.
Is that a
Jack- who
typical
said-
length
Jacqueline, you said you
of
would.
session, 30 minutes?
Anyone else?
Yeah, it's
Meg, you
30
said you
minutes.
would.
So I'm just bringing that up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Heather said she would
Yeah,
too.
30 minutes are
Okay.
taken away from class.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start working on something and then I'll send it all out, and then, we can have this either a company that goes to the board or it just comes back to policy, cause just to clarify, so this will go to the board and there will be some direction, we will, the next time we come back around, hopefully we'll get to look at what Amy's White, her, direction is, and we can decide on if we're taking that and just add her input.
Amy is the legal representative.
And
Okay.
then we will, this still goes then to all of our parents and community for input, so, I mean, we're at the very first stage.
Yeah,
This is
it's got
really
a
at
lot
the
to
rough
go.
draft, so,
Okay.
it'll go to the board for some direction, so they can kinda see where we're, angling this, but then it still goes out further, so I will do a things to consider doc. Just making sure it's Jacqueline, Heather, and Craig. I think I got everybody, yeah? You wanna help? Are you raising your hand to help me? No?
Oh.
Okay. Well, you raised your hand, so I just wanted to double check.
So was there more that needed to be added, or is that sufficient to that paragraph, Jacqueline?
That was it for that paragraph.
Okay. Anything else that needs to be?
So there's one other thing that Linda mentioned that we talked about at the end of
Okay.
the last meeting and deferred to this meeting. There's
Yeah.
two things. I think we covered the first one. The second one was I would like to add a separate waiver if the counselors are going to discuss anything in the controversial issues policy.
Okay.
Or I think,
Did we
I
have?
thought
gonna
we
forget all
added
the
that,
numbers.
we added it already.
did you add it?
Well, we
Oh,
have,
okay.
we have
And the
policy
form.
2340 and form 2340.
Yeah,
Those are all
we added
parent-
it.
Okay, so that is not a
Controversial.
waiver. That is not a specification of a separate waiver.
The
for
form is
discussion
they have to give
issues.
permission. That's so the policy and then the form, they have to
Can
give
you open
permission.
the 2345 so we can look at that and we'll go to the website.
Yeah, if you just go to the.
Open another tab.
Okay, we'll do that. Yeah, not a problem.
SD.
Just have to see if it's what you were thinking.
Go.
There we go.
Cause remember we added the, opt-in for the,
I remember us miscommunicating mostly in the last meeting.
Okay.
But, let's take a look.
30.
I thought it was 2345.
Yeah.
Was it 23?
Yep.
Can't wait for that dyslexia training. 45.
F.
There we
Yeah.
go.
There we go. So this is what currently exists.
Oh, I see. So that would be an actual form.
Yeah.
And we
Alright.
did this, we added the sex one too, we did both.
Okay, and how about the gender identity?
We don't,
You don't actually have a form for that?
we don't
Okay.
have an opt-in, cause we can't do it.
Right.
And would
but-
that be part of controversial, or do you?
It would be considered controversial. Are you saying that we add our gender
think, yeah,
policy, the one that
exactly.
we just, so not
Well,
a
so
form?
I think what would be better here would just be a separate document with a list of the policies. So this would be one of the policies. Another one would be 3281. Another one would be
3281, well, let's add that. So they all go to the bottom of the policy itself.
Are you saying part of the intake process?
so it could be part of the intake process, or yeah, I guess it would be part of the intake process. Yeah.
Cause that's where we
No, I
listed
lost
some of
my
the other
connection.
ones is, we wanted you to have to go through, that was part of the intake packet.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
So are there forms that you're wanting them to complete on the Lakeland School District side to have
That's
private
what we're trying to,
counseling? Because they're not Lakeland staff.
right.
No, that's for the parents. The Lakeland parents was the question that we talked about last time. And I think it was just a broad, I accepted this packet, I'm well aware. Just so they can't come back and say, well, nobody at the school district ever told me that was gonna happen. You
Well,
know, or.
and
So
again,
is it a
I would like
packet
it
that
to
people
be-
don't have to fill out? It's
Well, it
just
would
a
be a
packet
packet that they have to
receive?
sign. I am okay with the counselor discussing items in, say, policy 3281, which is the gender identity policy.
Who's responsible for?
Yeah, and that's a private thing between students and their counselor, not
Well, I
between
think-
Lakeland School District.
Right, this is why parents are signing it, not the Lakeland School District.
Okay, so my little girl goes through this program.
Right.
So the way that it works right now is, I went to the counselor at her school, who was Renee Vardoff, because my daughter was having a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And I was unable to find help anywhere else. I called all sorts of places, and no one can get your child in. And things just got worse and worse and worse. And I talked to Renee, and then she was able to refer me to Durney, and she is that was really the only thing that Renee did, that Lakeland School District did, and then the rest, it was a private conversation between me and my child's counselor, and I met with them like 3 different times and talked to them on the phone before my daughter ever saw them. But it's and I work in healthcare, so it's just this is a contract between my daughter and a counselor, not between the school
school.
district and my daughter. And I think that it's great if you want to give that information to people, but I don't feel comfortable signing anything about what's going on in my daughter's counseling sessions to anyone in the Lakeland School District, because it's none of their business.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
a
think
private thing.
anybody's-
Yeah, it's a HIPAA thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the concern from the parent perspective is that the parents, this is, as we know, this is a hot topic. And because of what's happened in other local school districts and around the nation, our parents are concerned that something's gonna happen with their children that they're not aware of. They wanna make sure that they've given permission for this to happen. So some way we need to figure out a way, because this is the other thing, is this all started came to the Lakeland School District as established relationship between these students and this service, and we're just gonna give them a place so that there's no transportation issues, right?
Right.
But that's not what's happened. Now we're aware that it's not only that, but new relationships are being established, referrals, however you want to word it. I might not be saying it right. So those parents want to make sure that, you know, how are they going to feel like they really are in control. And here's the thing is we all keep saying parents are in control, but not all parents feel like they are in control, or we wouldn't have all these questions coming up. I just wish we could get to that point that not everybody believes that everything's 100% good all the time. They just
Well,
don't.
I agree with that. I understand
what I'm
exactly what
saying?
you're saying.
And so I'm
It's a
just
part of the
trying
intake
to,
process.
But it's,
I'm just
yeah.
trying to go between both sides and
Right.
say, the school district's offering this, but
Yeah.
how do we make our students' parents feel like it's all, we're not gonna go take their kids and turn their kids into
Right,
something they
right.
don't have
I
any
think
control
what Kim-
over.
But that's a
I had
relationship
never
between
heard
a
the-
counselor and the family.
that
Right.
how
I
well
agree.
you just
Yeah.
described that intake part. I mean, even as the teacher, I didn't realize how little the school had to do
School
with
has
that.
nothing, yeah.
And so
They
that's
refer-
your
they told me
relationship
the
as
name,
a family with
Yeah.
the
It's just
healthcare
like
providers.
seeing any counselor in the whole world. And you can't
technically,
always
it's gotta
guarantee.
release a
Any
record.
doctor, any-
Yeah,
They
you
can't
can't
share
always
anything
guarantee
with
that it's
us.
gonna be a good relationship.
I
mean,
think the goal when that intake was discussed last week and the time before that was really about informing the parents to their rights and having
Yeah.
an understanding to bridge
Yeah.
that. That was kind of the goal. It wasn't really through the lens of what Lakeland School District, it was
Right.
just because when parents are asking what are the parameters in which they can make decisions, and so they're not feeling pressured or they're not feeling by anybody, by, you know,
Right.
so the goal was really to give as much information as possible, which is why I said, okay, for the pros and cons, we could do a consideration, like just, we want you to be able to make an informed
Yeah.
decision to the best of your ability if this is the right placement for your child.
right.
But
They're
if
on
we
the right
cannot,
foot,
right,
you know,
and we
so
cannot,
everybody agrees.
you know, if Heather has a family that reaches out to her and says, I wanna look into this, and that initial contact all happens with the parents, I mean, she could literally have a situation where there's never a release of records, and so she has no idea what's happening, because it
And
does
it's-
fall under HIPAA at that
Right,
point.
it's
And-
none of her business.
Exactly,
Yeah.
so it is, unless the parent gives permission.
Yeah.
The school district would be in the dark in the sense of what conversations
Right, and they
are
would only
happening.
know that my daughter is on the
Right.
list and she goes for her 30 minutes a week.
Right.
Because it's private, and I pay for it, I mean, it's all the school has nothing to do with it at all, except to just so nicely provide a place for my child to be seen, so she shouldn't have to miss 3 hours of school a day to go see a counselor.
Well,
Can I have a question?
Yes,
Because I don't have any children that use the services.
sure.
Is there a relationship between the student that's on the school grounds and the counselor if the student says, my mom and dad are never gonna accept me, they don't like me, they don't approve of what I'm doing, I don't want you to disclose whatever happens here to them. Is that relationship between the student and the counselor, does that parent have, is there any protection for the parent? They know exactly what's happening there at all times?
Well, I think with children counseling, cause,
It's a yes or a no, I mean, seriously,
The way
are
it's-
they obligated to tell the parents that there's a transition or gender identity problems if the student requests to not tell the parent?
if the child feels like if they feel like the child is in peril, or they feel like the child is going to hurt someone
How
else,
about
they
if the
do have to
student
tell me.
just says it?
I don't know, because
Okay,
that's
you
not
don't
my
know.
child's issue, so I don't know
I
if
do.
that is part of what, but this is a private, I'm saying this is a private counselor, this doesn't have anything to do with the
So
school.
Right.
There's
So
also
limit-
state law on this, I
Yes,
believe, on
yeah.
the age of the child.
Yeah, and I don't,
think it's somewhere around
yeah,
14 years of age.
that they get to make their own
The
decisions.
limits, the
So
limits
for-
of,
so
the limits of
for-
confidentiality, what they report, what they don't report, their treatment plan, all of that is gone over in the intake process. There's an
Yeah.
extensive packet that's called informed consent, where they go over, this is what information we will share, this is what not will be shared, this is what won't be shared, this is what we're required to do under state law, there's duty to warn laws, there's CPS reporting laws, so.
But the parental right law, so there is a new law coming, and this is where Amy White's gonna give us some guidance. There is a new law coming in July 1st my understanding of it is that anything related to that parents have to be informed. That's my understanding. So it doesn't matter if it's a school, it doesn't matter if it's private, my understanding. And so that's what we are seeking some guidance on, specific to counseling,
And
to the
therapists
new
have to be
parental,
compliant with state.
Right,
to
and
the
the
new
therapists have to be
parental, to
compliant
the
with
new
state law.
parental, it's not in effect as of now,
That's how,
but it's,
that's how it is in
as of
medical
July
law.
1st, it's
Yeah.
supposed to go into effect. So that's my understanding, is they would have to inform.
Craig, what was the
Legally.
was it 14 of age of
So,
consent? What was
so
that?
I had a child that was in counseling, and they were of an age, they were still under 18, but I think the counselor told us, since they were over 14, that actually my child then had to, if I asked the counselor, okay, how's the sessions going, what's bothering him, what's going on? And the counselor was like, I cannot disclose that because your child is over this age, and I wanna say it was 14.
13.
Is it 13 in Idaho? And it's an Idaho
So-
state
Well,
law.
that's what they told me that my
Yeah.
daughter.
So
Yeah, it's
if
an Idaho
my
state law,
child
yeah.
chose to basically allow the counselor to disclose this with me, then,
And that's where
I
we've
got
gone
it.
off the
But that's not a
But-
school policy,
but that's
that's
not.
a
That's-
state
that-
that's
legal
a state law.
policy.
And that's
That's
all
right.
that's all
Yeah.
the parents are asking. The parents are begging the district, maybe not all parents I talk to, are begging the district to say, yes, we hear you, we get it, okay, we'll write it down. And I don't understand why the district has such a hard time telling the parent, we get it, okay, maybe it's not it'll never happen, it's illegal, should never happen. The parents keep saying, you're not hearing me, and still we have these conversations.
Well, I think I understand and I get that parents want to be, I want to be
Yeah.
informed of my child too, but also too, my child is 17.
Well, and
So-
if they're not asking to be
So,
informed
it's a state
about
law.
they're not, yeah, but so is illegal.
It's the same thing with medicine.
Right.
My child,
But the
when she
parents
turned
aren't
16, I
asking
couldn't
that.
know anything about her medical stuff unless she let me know.
Yeah, the parents aren't asking about medical. Parents are saying, LJSD, are you going to take my child and transition them? If you want to know the truth, that's what they're asking. And LJSD will not say no, they'll say it's illegal. We are going to do that. Well, this is how it happens, and this is how this happens. And why can't we just say no?
Well,
No,
I
we're
will
not gonna
say,
do that.
no, we can't,
It's
and
happening
it is illegal.
everywhere.
There you go. That's what they're
It is
asking.
illegal, and no, we're not doing it.
That's what
So,
they're asking.
We are
But
on
that was our-
record of me saying no, but I guess this is what I would say. I would just caution all of us. This is what we're asking specific to our lawyer about the guidance of the new legislation. So we can debate this longer, but I really don't think
I don't
this
think
is
there's
a
a
moot point
debate,
because there is legislation coming specific
Right.
to this about how much parents are to be informed from the school district. I know the school district side, I don't know the outside counseling side, which is why we asked Amy White, but from a school, anything, the new parental rights that are coming into effect July 1st, anything related that is different than how your kid is normally acting, like let's just take out gender affirming conversations, anything, we have an obligation, we are legally required to inform parents of what is going on.
Right.
So we are not doing any of the things that other districts are doing, and I think this is why people have come to this district, because we are doing everything we can to protect parents and to do right by our kids. Most of our staff have kids in our district, and that has always been my kid. I have a senior in high school going as a senior, and so I want the same thing you guys want. So I'm publicly saying we are not doing those things, but I do feel like as far as to continuing what Heritage Health can and can't do, we should wait for some additional guidance, because there is
Well,
new
we don't
legislation.
need to go down the Heritage Health road.
Well,
We need to just, like you're saying, here's the law, no, we're not gonna do it, we're
Yeah.
gonna follow the law. That's all
Yeah.
they want us to say.
Yeah.
That
We
that's-
are
I wish
following
that
the law.
parents could be in the classroom and in the, so here's an example along those lines of transitioning. At my elementary school, there's a couple kids who wish that they would be called the opposite sex and want their name to change. And our principal took guidance from the district saying, no, we have to call them by their name. And if they want to be referred to as the opposite pronouns, try to avoid using pronouns and just call the student by their name. And so it's not as so I'm gonna love this kid in my classroom no matter what
Right.
they're trying to do with themselves.
Right.
But I'm not going to encourage them to change. I have to legally call them by the name that's on their records. Even if they're living with stepdad and never met dad, I still have to use their original last name. There's so many finite things that we have to follow, and we are trying so hard just to love your kid and give them the best education that we don't even want to think about.
I didn't.
Gender.
I was mad that we even had to do it. I missed a meeting, and this is what I came back to, and I was so mad. I was like, I don't even want to write the thing.
What I would
forget it.
What I would suggest, because there's going to be other laws that come around, and ultimately every therapist has to be compliant with state law. A lot of the questions and concerns you have about, do the parents know, do they not know? It's an extensive informed consent the parents sign. It's gone over verbally. There's a treatment plan, there's updates, there's.
The parents aren't asking about that. Well,
But
go
so,
ahead.
so my suggestion would be, because there's other laws that are not addressed in this policy, such as Idaho statute outlaws conversion therapy, which also is related to gender identity. So
Yeah, we put it in there.
Could we have just a broad statement that the district and mental health providers will be compliant with all state laws regarding approved therapies
And we
and
talked
practices?
about putting language
Yeah,
in there
it's in there.
specific
Could
to
we do
that.
that?
And
But
add
even when I-
protecting parent rights, and then
Yeah.
you.
It's in there.
To me,
but
you've
it's-
got the whole
When
thing.
I talked to Amy, that's why my assumption is it's taking her some time, because she just said this is covering more than just parental rights or, just some of the new legislation. There's just a lot going on with this, and so we talked about last time adding just that caveat is that there is an obligation
Yeah.
by all licensed individuals to follow.
And the
state
privacy of the student is important. And I know parents are responsible for their kids, but I've had at least 2 4th grade students threaten suicide. And they need to be able to talk to somebody about what's going on. They need that protection. And of course their parents need to give permission for them to talk to somebody. But in the time that my kids have been attending Timberlake Middle School, or junior high back then, and high school, we've known 6 kids who have died to suicide. I would hate to find out that my kid was going through something horrible and nobody told me. So I so get that, but I would love to find out at the same time that things were avoided because they got to talk to a counselor, and the only time they got to was during school because mom's working and can't take a day off of school to get their kid to the counselor every week, and the kid can't miss half of a day of school every week to go to a counselor. 6 kids. 3 of them were close friends of my daughter's. It's not a joke, it's not a controversy. It's so real, and it's right here. In Idaho, the number 2 cause of death for children from 5 to 18 is suicide.
Yeah, I don't think everything you just shared, I don't think anybody has ever spoken out against that or anything. The parents are just asking, will you respect things have changed, will you respect me as a parent? That's all they're asking. And every time they ask the district, it's gotten much better, but it seems like they get a lot of pushback, and parents are frustrated. They don't come out and say stuff. Well, they do to some people, they do get frustrated, and I get your frustration. Working with youth myself, I get it. And there's been times I've had to tell kids, look, if you share with me, I have to tell your parent.
Because we as teachers
Right.
are mandated reporters.
Right.
So if we
So-
know anything, we
Yeah.
have to tell.
Right.
So, yeah.
So it's not that. The parents, and I don't think, that's why parents flock here. They know our staff's good, they know our teachers are good, they do trust the district. They're just asking as we grow, and that is one thing I can say about our district. Even though we have these tough conversations, we always get through it, and we're always better on the other side. Always. And that's why we have the conversation, because parents are out there having them, and they just want to know that we hear them. That's all they're asking, and I'm trying to find a way for us to tell them, yeah, we hear you, because probably most of those kids that everybody likes to use as poster children probably ate at my table, right? And some of their parents would be very upset that they become the poster children for suicide because the parents to this day claim they were not suicide. So that even upsets me too. I even got an email from a teacher with their memorial list. And I wanted to tell them, excuse me, but those kids ate and slept in my house. Don't tell me about suicide. And some of them committed suicide after they were grown and had kids in the district. I've been here a long time. That's not the argument. The argument is parents want to know that they're heard, and they're not being heard. And they keep telling us over and over and over, you're not hearing, you're not hearing, you're not this voice, that voice, that voice, that voice. And what do we tell them? We can't give them a freaking line, black and white, saying we won't do that to your kids.
Well, I think ultimately what we need to remember here is that we are not therapists and these are not Lakeland School District employees.
We're not talking about employees. We're saying the
And-
district will not
But
do this.
The parents have all the choice to decide if they want to enroll in this service or
I know
if they want to discontinue services. So I really don't want us to get too far in the weeds, because as far as parental rights go, if you want to be in a state that has the most parental rights, Idaho is one of them. And I think our school district has done a phenomenal job of including parents at the table making these decisions, as evidenced by everybody at this table.
And isn't this a privilege? I mean, honestly, there's a lot of kids that aren't able to have counseling.
Right.
And you never need counseling until the day that you do.
Right.
And the school is offering this service as a privilege because there's many groups that would like to have access to our children. If the policies are designed the school will decide how these organizations are going to use the schools. And if the parents that have the kids don't want to use those services under the policies that the school has, there are options. I mean, I work 16 hours a day to make sure that my kids are taken care of, so that and not everybody can do that. But the policies are here, and if the parents don't want those policies, then there's options. And I understand your point, but you've made a statement. Parents have rights, but I have rights. I've raised my children. There is no but. Those are my children, right? That's kind of, no, there is no but.
You're raising
That's
children to become
This
adults.
is not a community. This is my children.
Yeah.
I make the decisions for my children, and if there's a but, then there's a problem. There is no buts.
Well, and coming back to the purpose of the policy.
Yes.
The purpose of the policy, ultimately, number one, is to protect the district, and number two, the children. And then we keep going on down the line. I don't feel that there is anything wrong with giving guidance to an outside entity that wants to come into our community and do whatever they do. They need to know what is expected. If our parents need the assurance, which I would hope that they would all want the assurance, that we are gonna stay within state guidelines, federal guidelines, all these guidelines, then we need to give that to them, especially in the policy. If the policy doesn't even state, it does state up here, we do.
I agree 100% with what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we should put a
Yeah.
line in here that says the
Follow-
district
that will follow-
and the service
Yeah.
provider will follow all federal, state,
Yeah.
whatever, local laws, and district policy.
Exactly.
And just put that in there, and it's a blanket statement, so that if we ever update policy, state laws get updated, federal laws get updated.
Right.
We never have to update this policy, it stays there. So I think, I agree 100%, Michelle. We should have that line in there that says that.
So that everyone's
blanket
gonna follow
statement.
the state, yeah, yeah.
That's easy.
And then, in all honesty, G&H is it G&H? I can't see.
Yeah.
Those would kind of disappear because it's already covered by
Wanted
state
to-
law, federal law.
Yeah, and whatever
the
that
policies.
ends up looking like, because we're not even really sure 100% what that's gonna look like. I
Right.
mean, we have they have like a draft of it, but every time, I mean, I've looked at it several different times, because working in the healthcare field,
Right.
we see that, you need to know what the heck's going on.
What I've read, it's related to medical.
Yeah, it's all
treatment, not
related to medical so
mental.
far.
I was-
Yeah.
so I was-
There is some legislation around.
I was gonna say, and who knows what's gonna end up happening with because it all just is kind of a draft right now.
What is
So
that supposed to
again,
be?
I think just putting a statement in there that covers all emerging laws, I mean, like I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
they're accountable to the laws above all, so, just like everybody else. And then any specific things like our student confidentiality, what the sessions look like, I mean, all of that can be an additional.
Well, when we met with Sierra, you know, she laid it out on the line and told us what it was gonna look like and what was expected, and just like you were saying, like what rights we had as parents, what rights my daughter had, and if we didn't like it, I didn't have to do it.
Right, you didn't have
Yeah, I didn't have to do it, yeah.
And I just really wanna make sure that our counselors are not being tasked with unknowingly becoming a part of the intake process. All we are is information sharers. We're asking about resources, we're sharing the contact information. We can't even contact the therapist without the parent's release of information. So I really just wanna make sure that there's a clear separation of our roles.
Yes, I was asked 2 different times before I was even able to be hooked up with Heritage Health, yeah.
So one thing I would just point out that it's still sort of a question to me then, and especially hearing your statement that your child was in the counseling, but you weren't sure if they could discuss the gender part of things or what things they would discuss and wouldn't tell you about. If we put in the line about, which I agree with, everybody's gonna follow all the federal laws. If the district has a policy about gender, we're not discussing this, but if we're not sure if this federal or the state laws are going to follow the same things in regard to counseling separate from medical care, my concern would be that a parent might sign their child up for the counseling thinking the counselors are following the gender policies of the school district because it's on school grounds and I'm receiving all these forms from information from the counselors, and not realize and not be informed that we might be from Heritage Health, that we might be talking about gender issues and we might not tell you about that.
Right.
That's my concern as a parent. And I get that this all may be a moot point because Lynn's gonna deal with it.
Well, I do think we need to decide as a group if there's a difference between gender affirming care and gender affirming counseling, which Craig was saying there is such a distinction last meeting. I think he's probably correct. And since I made the comment, which ignited that lovely
Can you
discussion.
elaborate on what you think the difference is?
I have no idea what the difference is.
Care is medical procedures,
Okay.
surgical type procedures, drugs.
Hormone therapy,
Hormone
that sort of
therapy,
thing.
thank you.
Yeah.
And then counseling is,
Counseling.
It's illegal in the state of Idaho for any counselor to insert their own belief system and try to influence somebody's sexual identity in any manner.
That doesn't mean it won't happen.
Is there a
That's
check and
correct.
balance for that?
But you
Yeah.
also too, as the parent, have to take some responsibility and decide if the counselor that your child is seeing is going to be the kind of counselor your child wants to see. I mean, there's religious counselors, there's all sorts of counselors, and you know, and you can find whatever counselor that you want that fits the needs for you.
Right,
So,
and
yeah, but
some
as a
parents
parent,
will do
that's
that,
kind of
and
the
some
parents.
parents will not
Well,
do that.
but that's their prerogative,
Okay, so,
don't you think?
I
I mean,
mean,
because
yes, it is.
you
That
take
doesn't mean
responsibility
that.
for my child.
Cool, I mean, that's good. So I think a lot of the discussion was kind of tangential to my point, so I'm going to give a short example of something that I would not be okay with. So let's say that my little girl's bunny dies. So she's sad. So she goes to the counselor for counseling, and the counselor says that she's so sad because actually she is a bunny. That is something that I would not be okay with. And I would
so
like
when you
her
say
to be-
counselor, do you mean school
Yeah.
counselor or do you
I
mean
mean,
mental
A
health?
heritage.
I mean, Heritage Health
Or
counselor,
like
or
a
whoever you want.
licensed
right?
counselor.
Exactly. Now, maybe it is the
So
case.
they would already have been signed up, right, to talk to that
So they
person?
wouldn't be able to talk to you unless you.
Right,
went to
unless you had
counseling
approved it,
and-
because there's that whole
Right,
intake process.
right, exactly. But in that process, I'm trying to make sure that there is this statement or waiver or whatever, that this won't be discussed unless I say it's okay to discuss it. See, this is a scenario that I would like to guard against. I think parents should have that right.
Do you feel like though that there would be like this huge list of the what ifs, what if?
I don't think so. I mean, personally, I can't think of a huge list. Basically, all the items that are covered by the policies that I discussed earlier. So 2345, 3281, I think, if I remember correctly, 2520. Yeah, okay. So no, I don't think it would be an extensive list. But yeah, I mean, as a parent, I would like that. No, if there's debate here, if people disagree, we can put it as a note to the board that maybe we should include this.
I'm wondering if we need, you know, some of our policies come with procedures. And it sounds like that there's so many
Yeah, it might be
caveats
good
or
to have a
something that we
procedure
might,
document.
we might have to come up with a procedure to accompany the policy. Or maybe put something like that in here, I don't know. There just seems to be a lot of procedural things that are,
But I guess, but again, it's starting to get us into the intake process of, that's between the counselor. He gets to say as a parent, this is what I'm concerned about, this is what I want in counseling, and this is what I'm not comfortable with. And then they respond, this is our treatment modality, this is what our sessions look like, and you can consent to services or you can choose to not consent to services. But I personally, as a school district employee, do not feel that it's our role to be in the middle of that. You've asked for information about a resource, we've given multiple resources to you, and it's your choice as a parent to decide if you pursue it or not. You could choose not to, and that's okay. You could not like your therapist, and that's okay too. But I really don't want us to continue to go down the rabbit hole of all these caveats when at the end of the day, I'm not the student's therapist. I was asked for
Well, I don't think the
information on a
district needs to
resource.
be involved in this at
and I
all.
share.
I don't think the district needs to be involved at all, other than supplying the form. The form can go straight to the provider, it doesn't have to go to the district at all.
Then they should probably develop that form. If it's
Well-
between you and the
But it's our
therapist.
policy.
Right, this is our policy, and like, I don't think I'm the only one in the district with this kind of concern.
I'm not saying you are, I'm just asking questions.
And, yeah, I mean, I would feel a lot more comfortable if that was in the policy. Again, if you guys disagree, well, we can put in a note and send it to the board. But this definitely enhances my comfort with the situation. I think that would be the case for probably a majority of the parents in the school district.
As the school counselor, I don't even think, correct me if I'm wrong, but talking to my school's counselor, you aren't even allowed to actually counsel and therapy.
We don't facilitate therapy.
Right.
We do brief counseling, we do skill-based.
Skill-based
problem
things,
solving,
yeah.
Friendship,
So I
things
think-
like that. It's a totally different.
I think what I'm trying to get at is the mindset of parents wouldn't know that in our schools we aren't even allowed to go there. So parents are very worried about things that we're not legally even supposed to
But
be
that's
doing.
Nate's point is,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I just, my 2 cents is, I feel like a lot of this is based in fear,
Yeah.
right? It's just
It's a lot of fear,
concern,
and
and
it is
so
scary.
how, and what I think people are advocating for is how do we nullify that fear in a way that's really transparent so parents can make informed decisions. We're not crossing lines, but we're also, I think we all want to protect our kids and we all want to protect our parents and parent rights. And so for some families that means something, and for other families it's something different. So then how do we provide a comprehensive way
I think that's what I'm saying.
to ensure that
Like if he
everyone is
and I are-
protected, but parents aren't fearing of,
Yes.
now I have this adult coming into my child's life that I've given consent to, and they're crossing a line that I'm not comfortable with.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
And what
Yeah,
I'm saying is,
basically, I
if
think-
he and I are talking, I don't know what he knows and he doesn't know what I know, and so he can make assumptions about what I think might, and it is a problem with schools in general, how do we get the word out there?
When you have Washington right here, that
Yeah.
it's completely different laws. So
Yeah,
I think we all want the
Yeah.
same thing, and so I just, again, I think we should wait for some additional guidance, and then look through that lens, how do we provide transparency to what is going to happen so that parents feel comfortable and they're not shutting down, a potential resource. But ultimately it is up to the parent, and if they're not comfortable, they have the ability to say no. But if there's a way we can write it that is transparent to parents, so they're not fearful of what's happening behind closed doors, because that's the reality. People are fearful that, something's gonna happen and they have an adult that's impacting their child's
Well,
life and they don't have control over it.
That's a great point, because when we think about that, if we want kids to get support, however that looks, we want people to be safe, feel safe doing that,
Right.
reaching out for their
We
kids.
wanna remove the roadblocks so that the resources and the service can be provided. And so whatever roadblocks that is, and it could look different for different parents, then we try to provide a transparent process. That's what I think our goal is. But again, back to this particular thing, I just really feel like we should wait for some additional guidance, because this may be a non-issue and just cannot happen, and so we don't even have to, right.
I didn't see anything on here, it's so if they break state or federal law or whatever, what happens to them?
Well, we're not in charge of Heritage
I'm
Health,
saying
and
they
so
need to be
if-
banned from the buildings or schools.
There should be some kind of accountability.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
they're getting special
Exactly.
privileges, there should be some kind of.
Well, I would
accountability.
imagine that we could write something, but their license would be,
Yeah,
for-
Well, I know, but they need to be
Yeah.
banned from the school
Yeah, I have a
district.
question. So the counselor that just was quietly erased from Heritage Health, did he have any input in our district? Do we know how many students he may have had contact with? Well,
To
no,
my
because
knowledge,
he
he was
did.
never part of our district at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's
What
his,
is she referring to?
there was a counselor at Heritage Health who had his own mental health issues. He was counseling himself. It was on his bio on Heritage Health. Anyways, Heritage Health removed him because he had a lot of things going on. Firearms, physically attacking people, and he dealt specifically with youth, but nobody knows if he
He was not affiliated with he was never in our district.
He wasn't, we know that, okay.
Mhm.
Cause that was a question I had too.
Yeah.
So there's another thing that parents, I mean, this just happened too, and
Right.
because it wasn't transparent enough, that made people's fears even worse, you know?
And I can't speak to it because he wasn't ever a part of us.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, so those kinds of things. So as much as we wanna say it doesn't happen, there's a lot of, and I know we can't, you know,
Right, because that happens
it,
in every,
right,
that happen,
right.
we have
But I
doctors
feel
that are
like-
totally crazy, nurses that are totally crazy, they lose their license or whatever else, and you
Right.
can't, you don't even know what's going on
My
behind
thing
closed
is
doors.
this, is
I mean,
that-
that's just how it is in life, right? I mean,
Right.
We
really.
have a liability clause in the
Right.
MOU.
Right.
You know, they're liability wise, they do background checks, they
Yeah.
can't have somebody that has a felony
Right.
on their.
You
And
can't
we
get
do our own
licensed.
background
Yeah.
checks as well,
Yeah.
so anybody that's
Right.
working with kids in our district, so Heritage Health will do theirs, we do an additional
What
one.
they have to do, like in my district, we have to, anyone who comes in the building has to go through I think it's called Raptor, where they swipe
The
their
volunteer
ID.
thing.
Ours, they would do that initially, but ours is more extensive, they have to be fingerprinted.
Oh, cool, okay.
If there was
So-
a complaint though, is there a process to stop it, like that today, that person is not going to be on the campus? If there's a complaint or there's a problem, is there or is it a period of time that would have to happen, like a review period or something?
I would assume it'd have to be investigated
Mhm.
Yeah.
and
It'd have to be
then
due
decided
process.
from whatever appropriate
Mhm.
person
You
needs
wouldn't
to
just take a
decide
false
that.
accusation against another person, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be
Process.
careful about that kind of stuff too, 'cause
Yeah.
that can ruin people's lives and, I mean,
Oh,
it has
I
to be
imagine.
investigated,
I
right?
imagine it's a real thing.
Yeah, oh, I agree
Yeah,
100%,
anything
sure.
private.
On
Yeah,
our
sure.
end, which you may not know this, but I do meet with Heritage Health, at least every other week I meet with the therapist. I do our district counseling collaborations, with our entire district team, where I get, specific feedback on what's happening in their buildings, how Heritage Health services are going. And then I also talk to the therapists as well on their end to see how things are going, is the space adequate? And then I also do check-ins with their clinical supervisor, who's Tracy Sutton, and she does include that feedback for their performance evaluation. So if I were to get any negative feedback or get a parent complaint, that would be shared with their clinical supervisor.
How many people are we talking about in this whole program? I mean,
So
how many counselors have access to all of our schools?
we only have 2 therapists.
So only 2 therapists.
Only 2
are
therapists.
hitting all the schools and all the students.
No,
at this
not all.
point.
Not every single school. They're not able to be at every single school. They're short-staffed. So we have 2 therapists that share the load essentially and have specific schools, but I have a few schools that are without therapists. My school's been without a therapist for several years now. Spirit Lake has also been out of a therapist, and Twin Lakes, their referrals were not as high as the other schools, so they were transitioned to another school that had a really high wait list.
So we're just two people out
Mhm.
that we're dealing with in our schools.
Yes.
And what you just described is in the MOU, talks about that escalation process, if there's conflicts or concerns, section
Yeah.
F.
Well, and again,
That's also on the protocol that I developed with Heritage Health of the eligibility criteria and just some of the specific, because I really wanted to make it clear what our role is and what Heritage Health's role is, and then at the end it says if you have any questions or concerns or complaints, contact Heather Hamilton at such and such.
So Michelle just put in a disclaimer.
Trying to, because I can't think of all the words. In the event a mental health provider violates any of the identified requirements or whatever's, the mental health provider shall be banned from LJSD students and buildings. But I'm trying to word it so that what it is it's on the LJSD campuses. It's not, I mean, if a parent thinks there was no violation and they want to continue services at Heritage Health, pitter patter, have at her. But we can't open the district that way.
What is the
that type of-
identified requirements?
Yeah, that's what I.
That's,
Oh,
what are we
listed
speaking
requirements.
Right there,
Policy.
mental health provider requirements. So any of the.
If they break the law.
Identified mental health.
If they were
Mental.
referral required.
I guess somehow I would want it worded that it can't be an accusation, there has to be some due
Right.
process.
Right.
That would be in the.
Subject to due process, I don't know.
Yeah,
Well, that
subject
would be your procedural thing. We don't wanna,
Right.
Yeah, I
sort of
know
like
what you
what
mean, yeah.
Heather was saying, we don't wanna, and that's an admin
Right.
process and, you know.
Mhm.
I think you gotta put campus or buildings, but the students
Okay.
may be an issue, right? Because the parent can still
don't
take the
have
student
LJSD
down to their
campus.
facility.
Yeah.
Right, that's a parent choice,
Yeah, so just say campuses.
Yeah.
And then are you, and this is just a tiny little technicality, but what if that person, that provider is a parent in our school district and wants to attend events?
Ooh.
If you say that, then that
And
can
wants
open
to-
that up.
Okay,
Attend
so
events.
it's,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
what?
What's to?
Attend an
if it's a
event.
parent.
Like
Professional
a parent, if
capacity.
I'm a parent and I'm that provider, and now I violated something, I can't be on campus to go to a basketball game.
We'll just say
Of my
providing
kids.
services.
Yeah.
To provide services.
What
maybe.
Chris is saying is you didn't technically no trespass, you're just
Right.
saying that those services are no longer, you're not allowed to render those services
Yeah.
on the
Correct.
district level.
Yeah.
They,
So
they
it shall
can't
be
do it.
banned from providing
good.
services
They were no, it
on-
was not a
yeah.
no trespass situation.
Right.
It could be,
Not
but
from-
it's
It
not
could be, yes, it
necessarily.
could, yes.
Shall be
From providing
From
mental health
providing
Included from
services,
providing.
yeah, services at the campus.
Services.
On, yeah, on campus.
Can we change ban to like discontinued?
Discontinued or
Why are
excluded
we
or
softening
something?
and fluffing this up when someone violates the law?
Shall be prevented?
Because this is our law.
Excluded.
I know, I just don't.
Prohibited.
I just don't like the word ban.
Prohibited.
Prohibited is a good
I mean, if you
one.
wanna use them, but just.
I think maybe ban with a hammer emoji
Hey,
out
we did some,
I mean, look it up.
yeah.
Hey Siri.
Get the emojis
Hey, we played
out.
some synonym games last week, remember Nate? We played some
Yeah,
synonym
we
games.
did.
I do have an additional question. Speaking of what we've been talking about, there was under district expectations, one of the things that it says is the district shall evaluate the effectiveness of its collaboration with mental health providers every 6 months and make adjustments as needed. Could we clarify that? That's really ambiguous, and I think we need to have some parameters around what that entails, because as of right now, the process is the Heritage Health Liaison, which is myself, communicates directly with the building counselors. I get direct feedback. I communicate with the therapists themselves, and I directly relay any concerns to the clinical supervisor, and that's used for their performance evaluations.
So we talked about all of that in addition that you meet with Lisa and I monthly and then
Yes.
are going up. So that was kind of a way to sum all that up.
And we kind of noted it further down in J, I think, didn't we also, like, what?
Because there was a way that, I mean.
It's like, what is effective? Is it
Right here.
professionalism? Is it?
We
is it
talked
that they're
about like,
meeting-
is the space working, is it within the lens of the scope of what you control? That's what we talked about.
Should it reference J?
Does that make sense, Heather?
Yeah,
But that's a good idea.
that would make more
If you
sense.
just put that in that sentence about.
Because when I looked at that, I
Indirect
thought,
reference
well,
to J.
that's part of what we're doing is we're keeping information on how many kids they're serving, what buildings.
We tried to
they're in.
summarize that and
Yeah.
try to capture everything.
Cause to me, effective would be the families feel supported, they feel like they have a good relationship, they are they're fully staffed, as in, not fully staffed, their caseloads are full.
Mhm.
They're maintaining full caseloads, they're responsive to our suggestions, and they're professional with our students and staff. Those are some of my thoughts, but we also, obviously collect data as well.
Right.
On sort of that same note too, another thing that we could put in to help identify how's the collaboration going and is this effective and is it benefiting all parties would be if we could put in like F there, I guess, in our little list, and put in that there would be that any surveys, like have the district survey the parents or students or both who are receiving services if they want to provide feedback on a whatever basis, quarterly, annual, whatever, and that any surveys or written feedback received by the district staff from parents or students would be provided to the board as part of this evaluation of.
So I know I keep bringing this up, but part of that new parental right bill is there is something that their surveys cannot be sent out to parents without prior knowledge, so we have to get permission prior, anything related to anything. So that would fall a little bit under this if we were sending it out.
Can we just post it on the website though, so if somebody wanted to provide feedback and is uncomfortable talking to.
You mean that it's being, like their child is being seen by
Yeah,
part
like
of this?
Yeah, like, so I think you said your daughter
Mhm.
sees a counselor, so if you wanted to give feedback, that you have a path to do that anonymously if that's what you prefer, and that feedback would get to the board, so that as part of what the board does is that they could evaluate how effective it is, and are they getting great feedback from parents, are there concerns that should be addressed?
Yeah, if the district is doing something like, I would just want guidance specific to this new interpretation of, and, cause anything parent surveyed, student, anything we're supposed to.
Who has to approve that, Lynn?
Huh?
Who has to approve that? I'm just asking.
Parents. Like any surveys that the district is going to send out, we have to get parent
Oh,
approval
okay.
for.
So you could have a place though on the website where you could click
It's just a
to
drop-in,
just
right.
get, to just
Here's
give
a feedback.
like
It's
your
not a
whatever.
survey.
Yeah, not a survey, but
Right.
yeah, if you feel the need to
Right.
say, this is going great, or this is
Right.
not going good at all, or I think you should do this, or whatever
Yeah.
else.
I guess I wanna make sure that we're still following due process.
Right.
Well, if I
that
was
if-
doing it,
That if there's a
Oh, I
complaint
see what you're
or
saying.
concern,
yeah.
even if it's something that's heard by somebody in this room or a board member, that needs to be investigated.
Yeah.
Well, if it's an anonymous link on a site,
Right.
anybody can go there and see
So-
whatever they want.
Right,
Exactly.
so I don't feel comfortable with an anonymous survey.
I don't think it should be maybe anonymous.
No.
You don't even know if they have a child in
You have to
the.
put
I
your
don't,
name.
did we
Yeah.
say it would
Yeah,
be
that's true.
anonymous?
Yeah.
It's a problem
Well,
with
she was
this
saying
district,
potentially
everybody
it
wants
could
to
be
be
anonymous
anonymous.
so that people would say something.
And again,
You value our privacy.
Yeah.
I don't know how comfortable I am with it in regards, because it makes it feel to me like we are becoming then their clinical supervisor. That we're taking ownership over their performance, and I question if.
Okay,
I
well.
mean, there should be accountability to the district. We're getting those special
Absolutely.
privileges here, there should be some kind of accountability.
Well, I mean, we are sharing information, we are collaborating, I just don't know.
But if all
I
the
just don't
parents
know
were
if that-
gonna provide feedback that
don't
it's
know if that's
not
our-
going well, wouldn't we wanna know that, or the opposite, if
Yeah,
it's
they
doing
would-
great,
They
we
would
wanna know.
be, they would be
They would go to the
contacting
counselor, or, I'm sorry.
me, and I would be notifying our administrators,
Yeah.
it's a very transparent process, and.
I
That,
guess
and
that's
that
true too.
feedback would be given back to the district?
And
Oh,
people can,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's in the MOU.
I've
Right.
emailed
Any
board
parental
members
complaint I
and
get, I go directly to-
principals and counselors, I mean,
The parents know they can go complain to you.
parents should know.
It's on-
I guess
it's
I'm
on our
assuming
procedures.
parents know that they can email at any time or call at any time. And I have mixed feelings again. The anonymous thing,
Yeah,
so
sure,
we
that's
had
anonymous.
a, we had on our school website, I think it was district-wide, I'm not sure, where there was a button to report bullying. Well, kids and teachers were just randomly reporting chaos, and most of it was anonymous. There's no way to follow through. A lot of it was made up. Some of it you could tell a kid just wrote something. So it's, I think I heard Dave say everybody wants to be anonymous. But when things are serious, we kind of have to just step up and
So,
not
so
be
I guess
anonymous.
what I would wanna know is maybe just really making sure that it's explicit that if they have any concerns at all, this is their process and they can contact the Heritage Health Liaison, whoever that may be.
Well, maybe that should be part of what we put in here too, like who,
Or like
when we're talking about
school
giving this,
district
assist-
designee
yeah,
or-
we're talking
and
about,
this
Doesn't have
yeah.
to create a
Yeah.
Who to
procedure,
contact.
These are all procedural.
Like, I mean, I would contact
issues.
Renee just cause I know Renee, but I didn't have any idea that you were the liaison.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the only.
I mean,
mean, it would
I
be good
guess
to know those
in
sort
my
of things,
mind,
I
it would
guess.
follow a grievance. If there was a concern, it would follow the grievance, and so it would come to either the building principal, they would go to Heritage Health, or it would, I mean, we get a lot of where they bypass the school and come straight to us, it would follow that. And again, I'm playing devil's advocate, there are situations where parents don't feel comfortable, so that's where the anonymous comes in. And so if we're talking about through the lens of removing roadblocks, if there is a parent that isn't comfortable, who do they go to? And it may not be, I recognize if we do anonymous things, there's no action steps attached to it, but it does give you a pulse of what people are feeling. So I don't know how you shut both of those down. I mean, we can't take action if we don't know about it. So if there's a scenario where you say this happened and, you know, we get feedback on some of the surveys that we send out for policy, and somebody will say this happened and I want follow-up, but then they don't give me an email or a phone number, and it is truly anonymous. I don't know, there's no way for me to find that information. I don't collect emails on it, so.
Which makes it super difficult to do.
You can't follow up,
can't
but
do
I think if
anything
you
with
know that, then it does, I mean, there are people that are uncomfortable with that face-to-face or even a phone call. Confrontation is hard for them, so I don't wanna shut that voice down either.
So
There is
we
real
need to
fear about
include-
coming forward.
Do we need
A lot-
to
you have a lot
include
of
like
people.
a grievance?
I mean, we do have a grievance policy.
In the list of things that
No,
were.
but, I mean, to Marona's point, you guys are talking about a procedure.
Yeah, we're gonna have to create a procedural thing, because I think just because of the nature of the policy and because we have so many other procedural things that already exist, that maybe it needs to be brought into this or at least referenced. Because almost all surveys we do are anonymous. I have been since I've been on the board. We don't ask people for their names. And the student rights, I did go back and look it up. The federal rights, they have a right to be anonymous, and they also have a right to deny all these things, so they need to be aware of that too. But
we would only be targeting the Heritage Health families, so only the Heritage Health families would be obviously receiving this survey.
well, we would do like our other I don't know that we need to, the same way as before, I don't think we need to identify them. I think we could just say, like when Lisa does her little, the little newsletter thing that
Monthly-
she sends
the
out.
monthly
Yeah,
newsletter.
She could put something in there. Hey, we're doing a survey. Is this service, is this service working for you, or how are we doing, or something like that.
So how do we know we're gonna get the Heritage Health families and not have folks that
Well, we don't.
are anti-mental health just submitting responses
Well,
because
we
they're
don't.
uncomfortable with the service?
We get bad stuff like that all the time. We get people that do it 2, 3, 4 times. We weeded through it. One meeting we spent and read 750 comments. And after you went through some of them, you noticed that it was obviously the same person. Like, some of it we changed the survey to knock out. Once they do it, they couldn't do it again. So we don't know that. There's no way for us to ever know any of them.
We could talk to Heritage Health and ask
Yeah.
them to have
It
some
just
type
doesn't
of
seem like it's an accurate measure. and
check-in process
if
for
it's not an
them.
accurate measure, we would not be able to accurately ensure
Well, we would
that
if we
is-
had Heritage Health do it.
Yeah.
If Heritage
Yes.
Health sent it out to their families.
Yes.
And from a business standpoint, it is good to get feedback. What is the intake rate? I mean, it could be specific to the systems. It could be like,
Yeah.
we could ask them to do some type of check-in, to, that's just how are things going with our protocols and our systems, and is this working? I mean, that's it, so that it is.
That would be more appropriate.
Yeah, we're not
targeted.
asking about how the counseling is working. We're
Right,
asking,
it's- right.
do you have enough access? Do you need
Right.
more access? Is this, do you feel like the meeting space is good? Is it not good? Do you need more help than what we can give you? That's what the board would be looking at, is the effectiveness of the district's provision of the service to them.
Well, and that's why I wanted some
You know.
specific parameters around effectiveness, because if effectiveness is being measured by they're able to meet all the needs, that's not realistic. That's not a realistic measure, and so we need to be very clear
It
about
was-
what the measure is. If the measure should be, is my student improving? Is my student more stable now that they're in services than before? And am I being treated with respect, and is this a professional relationship?
But that's from the, we're not going there, we're going from, can we do more? Do we have kids that aren't getting the needs met? And that was part of my
We're
thing.
doing all that we can do.
No, I mean the district, I'm from a district,
Well,
not,
that'll come out of I, right?
not, yeah.
All that data right
Right,
there will tell you
exactly.
that.
I mean,
So
That's
you
what
don't
I-
need a survey for that, you've got that data.
Well,
You
and
can see how many kids are on the wait list.
And we already.
Right, this is part of
We
that.
already know that we need more mental health services, and I tried to bring a contract in with another agency to meet the needs. So again, everything you need to know as far as how many kids are being served, what the need is, you're going to know. If there's a specific grievance.
Well, I mean, the parents were
My-
bringing it up, I was just saying what the parents are looking
My
for a way
recommendation
to.
would be,
you
that we
know.
not do a subjective survey. Cause on Tuesday, maybe I'm gonna say I feel great, and then on Wednesday I'm not. So I think if we want to, I think we just should talk about what we're gonna say, and maybe that's not right now, but what those parameters of effectiveness are. I think we should stay away from a subjective survey though.
It's this right here was the effectiveness, we moved it to put it
Yeah.
together.
Put it at the base
As far
of
as-
what you're giving the board.
Right.
And then based on the information that's provided, the district in collaboration with the board shall evaluate the effectiveness.
Right.
Okay, well, that's a lot of
Maybe it's the word
collaboration.
effectiveness, that's getting everybody,
Um,
maybe we should change the word effectiveness.
Monitor?
Just evaluate the collaboration itself, I suppose.
Yeah, of its collaboration.
Yeah, just the collaboration and see if it's working for everybody, right?
Because really, after a year, after 6 months and 6 months, right, you will probably have a better feel for, oh, we'd really like you to send out a survey, or, that could come later, but I don't think it needs to be written, anything about a survey in policy. I think we
Right.
get into
There is
that.
no, not
the policy.
No,
Yeah.
but I just say, if people are thinking of doing that, I just think that opens up, that's just gonna be right into the weeds on that.
And I always worry about subjective conversations and in writing, because right now, we're gonna write something that with what we all are in alignment with, but what happens in 5 years when we're not, I probably will be, but some of you will not be at this table. Chris will be retired at that point. But you know what I mean, so then what does that look like? And so I just.
Well, right now, we're worried about today because
Right now.
we're happy we're not living in 1997 policy world.
Right.
So we're gonna do
We
today
still-
and this year
we
and be
still-
happy.
I'm gonna remind you that we still have a few that are
I know,
there, so.
we're getting there. Yeah. That's
So
fine. We'll
our
just do today.
next steps, are we fine with leaving this how this is for right now? We will take it to the board. I will get guidance hopefully, and then I will do a things to consider doc and get some feedback from the team, and this will all come back to policy at our next policy meeting.
I have a question on that. So shouldn't this new document go to the lawyer, right, for him or
Well,
her to
she's
clean
on
up?
this doc, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then it would go to the board after it
Mhm.
comes from a lawyer, right?
Yeah, it's already sent to her and it's a live doc, so she'll see all the changes.
Yeah, I heard that the board would see it first, so I wanna make sure the lawyer would provide, or the attorney would provide feedback, then the board would.
Yep.
And then
get
where
that
does it go
copy.
from the board? Does it go, did you say you said that?
It'll come back to this team.
Oh, okay.
And we will send it out, we'll look at the feedback from the attorney, and then whatever direction the board decides, and then we'll make those tweaks.
Mhm.
And then typically it then goes out to parents for parent input.
How does that happen now that you can't do surveys or whatever else? When you just send, is that one of those generic things that we just have new policies, click here to see what they are? Or how does?
It's not a survey.
Well, not a
Please
yeah.
review it and.
No, I mean,
provide-
but wait, how does it come through my monthly
It comes through-
newsletter?
It's
Email
a
blast.
Lisa will send out a link and it's an email and it'll just say, and we won't have an old policy, so here's a new policy that we're looking at under review, please review this. And then literally our questions are, I mean, they're really basic, you're just gonna give feedback, do you agree with this, do you not, or do you have a question, you know?
Gotcha.
I can't remember off the top of my head what
I was just asking because I didn't know how it all worked. I didn't know how it
Yeah.
all got to people.
And then we spend the time.
And it's anybody, it's not just parents,
It's
it's anybody
anyone.
in the community.
Anybody
can
that's a
give us
taxpayer
feedback.
that has access to links that can that are registered through the district can. And I will tell you, when we've done this pretty consistently, I feel like we've done a really good job. When we get those results back, I mean, we literally go line by line by line. It's not a perusal. It's not. I mean, sometimes the entire 2 hours is going. If we've had big policies with a lot of feedback, I mean, and somebody else will have the policy up and we're just line by line. Is this something we could add, we could tweak? So sometimes we only have 7 comments, sometimes there's 950.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Lynn, I had a minor kind of nitpicky thing that I wanted to see if people agree with adding to number 7 in parental rights. It's very minor, or 6, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was like,
just adding to the end of that, prior to the commencement of mental health services, the parents have the right to meet prior.
Remember we talked about that, and I can't remember who argued this point, but somebody just said for some parents they won't want to meet, so we wanted it to be.
This just says.
Oh, you
It's
must
not
have the
the
right.
same.
Okay, I think that's how we changed it. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So the parents have the right to meet and approve counselors prior to the commencement of counseling services.
Oh, which you would anyway,
We can
because
send
you have
you
to
guys
sign
an updated copy of
everything
this
out
if
there.
you want. Just
Yeah, you
give
have
your
to sign it.
email to
Heather,
Lynn.
is there any scenario where that's done over the phone, like a parent can't come in? You email it and then they send a copy with their child?
For an intake,
Mhm.
they always.
It has to be in
They
person.
always need to meet with the parents. That's what delays the intake process.
Okay.
Is that there's a lot of sometimes tracking them down, and we've really talked a lot about how can we try to improve that process because it delays them getting to care.
That's what I thought, but I wanted to double check.
I had a couple questions about under the parental rights here when we talk about, and I just want some clarification as a parent here. So it says like 3, so parent signatures may be necessary for authorization for service forms, and then insurance forms may need to be completed for services to be received. Are we just talking about with the counselor, not anything with the school? Okay, because I was like, I didn't sign anything with the school at all. It was all through the counselor.
It's just the
Okay.
intake with the counselor.
Okay, and so you're just telling people that might be what they have to do. Okay.
And then one other point, I think where we just have the policy number, we should probably spell out what the actual name of that policy is, just so that's good.
Are
We
they
do it
at
in
the
some.
bottom?
I think I couldn't find 3501.
That's because
That's
it's
this
one.
policy.
Oh, I was like, oh, sorry. I
I
was like, I looked everywhere and I could not find it.
We had to name it, yeah.
Okay.
Just put the name
I just
of
wanted to
the
read that.
policy on there.
Yep.
They should all be down here with the.
Well, then, let's be consistent, because then there's one up here that has the name in it and the number, I believe.
Controversial
Maybe not.
policy and then just
Yeah, the
policy.
controversial
Yeah.
policy, so pull controversial out.
So you're just saying put them all there or don't put any of them? Like put all, the name.
Either leave a policy
names.
number,
Yeah.
or put in policy number and whatever it's called, mental health policy or whatever it is.
I think it might be helpful for parent concern if they see the policy's name.
I would too, as
Yeah.
opposed to
Yeah.
going down there at the bottom.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't find policy 3. Just the form. If I didn't know what the name was, I probably wouldn't realize.
So when we call policy statement, will it be called mental health providers? Maybe.
So is the name of this then, you guys,
Oh,
mental
yeah.
health providers? Oh, policy 3501. So is that what we're calling this?
Yeah, 3501 will be its number,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, mental health
Mental health
providers.
providers,
Because it
Got
could be
it.
Heritage Health,
Sure.
it could be anybody.
It
Yeah.
could change,
Yeah.
yeah. I wonder if Amy White at the state,
Right
the
up.
attorney, if she has references of already nice
done
policies,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that we could
Well, and
reference.
there's a little bit of a misunderstanding about that too. Amy White is not the district attorney.
No, state,
Yeah.
state, but she might know of resources of, hey, this
Well,
district
she's
has a
not
nice,
state, she's not state either. Amy is
she's
our.
a attorney.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she
That knows state
handles
law.
ICRIM and liability.
Okay.
Well, how,
That's what she
so
does.
how is she affiliated with us?
She's an ICRIM attorney.
Oh, gotcha.
So she's a
Gotcha.
service through
Sure,
ICRIM for
sure,
liability.
gotcha.
I would too.
And then we have our local attorney,
Okay.
you know,
It's feelings.
for a lot of these too.
Mhm.
Pupil rights.
It's largely about socialism.
I'd like to look at that, cause
Oh,
kids have rights.
yeah.
Yeah, they have a lot. We're not even supposed to be surveying them unless they say, okay, it's a federal law. But we do it anyways.
I know, it's one of our end of the year things when
Yeah.
I work to
Kids
survey
have
the
a right
kids.
To approve it.
What I wanna make sure of is that your concern that you brought to the table, do you feel it's been addressed, or do you think we should add something for the board to take into consideration when reviewing this policy?
Yeah, I think it would make sense to suggest that if you take, let me look it up.
That's
Under parental rights, two items B, C, and D, I think there should be a form where you can waive in or out of discussions on topics on those two policies.
Okay,
Which ones now?
Like an opt-in or an opt-out.
okay.
Correct.
Who's managing those forms?
The parents and Heritage Health. So they receive the forms from the school, they give them to Heritage.
If
And
they
they
fill
should
them out,
probably
cause it's just a packet, right, that they're getting, that people are getting?
Correct,
Is that
yeah.
right? So if they wanna fill them out, then they give them to the Heritage Health people? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, okay, good, thank you.
And I took out the name of the other one.
That's
I
fine.
don't think we can require another agency to oversee a form part of
That's one of our forms.
Yes, now if they were a Lakeland School District employee, we certainly could, but we can't mandate that they fill out a form. Now, if we wanna give them the parents' reference to these specific policies, we absolutely can, but we can't ask Heritage Health and require them
Why can't you do
to
that?
house them, because they're not Lakeland employees.
So, what does that matter?
Well, I think,
Agreement then that they
Right,
get
it's easy to-
They get to
there's
practice
no
here,
requirement.
and this is a requirement, you know.
I don't think there's a law against that.
I think what we can do is have the waiver form, simply, the acknowledgement of the receipt of forms is going to be returned and kept at the school district in the student's file, as should the waiver, because if it ever comes up, a copy of that waiver should be given to Heritage Health and they can do whatever they want with it. And
Right.
it can remain in the student's file so that the parent has the assurance that their voice has been said and heard. The district has it documented that this is what's supposed to be in agreement and going on. Heritage Health is acknowledging the fact that we have this and this is where the parent stands, and all I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
So who's giving these forms? Who is managing, giving these forms,
Heritage Health.
overseeing them, and then getting them signed and returned to us?
The informational packet that's going to be given to parents when the counselor or the parent comes and says, I think this child needs outside service help from a mental counselor. Okay, it was told to the committee that when there is a concern for a child, that the counselor gives the parent a pamphlet of here's services in the area.
A list of resources.
Right.
List of resources, thank you.
So you're wanting, so this is, so essentially the counselors would have to give them this packet
Correct.
if they decide to, is this just as a part of the referral process, or is this
Yep.
that they're establishing services?
No, this is the referral process. This is making sure that we have communicated everything we possibly can to the parents, that the district is saying your child would benefit from counseling services. So we're giving them where the district stands on all of this information. The only thing we're asking back is within this packet, because I would envision someone making just 100 packets and wherever, you know, divvying it out, whatnot. But at the back is a acknowledgement, receipt of form that the parent signs when you give them the
I
packet.
just don't want them to think that because they're signing a form, that means that they're enrolled in services, because we can't guarantee that they're going to get services.
If it states, this is an acknowledgement that I have received all of this information, that's not stating I'm signing up for services. It's saying the district's done its part in getting me the knowledge that I need to have to make an informed decision for my child.
Then we need to clearly state that.
We need to make that clear,
Because there'll be some parents who will
That'll be-
believe that.
It will be on the acknowledgement form. It's
This
not
is not
in
the-
the
the
policy.
picture of the service.
Not
Yes.
arguing, guys, I'm just saying that should be
Yeah.
clearly stated, so let's put it on that form, right?
Right.
I think we're all in agreement, so.
Since you are the
Right.
liaison,
Like a ticket.
this seems to be encompassing everything. This subject matter that we're talking about here, about the transitioning, all that. Is, what percentage, if you're not disclosing information, but is it a huge part of the services you seem to be providing in other schools? Is that something that you understand? Is this really all this encompassing within the schools for counseling?
Are
and the
you
need?
asking how common it is to have a mental health therapist in
Dealing
schools?
with these disclosure issues that we're talking about, this transition therapies, all this other stuff that is going through, is this everything that, it seems to be everywhere around us? Is this something that
I
council?
mean, any student with any mental health disorder, including gender dysphoria, could
Yeah.
seek treatment. A vast majority of the time, when we're making referrals or parents are seeking services, it has a tendency to be more depression, suicidal thinking, younger children, poor impulse control, emotional dysregulation seems to be more of the
Yeah.
common factors. I would say it's pretty rare, and if you look at statistically, it's pretty rare that you actually have gender dysphoria. But
It just seems to be everything now, everything you hear, everything you
But
hear
it's
on
such a
TV.
hot topic, don't you think?
I know,
in
that's
the
what I'm
press?
saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, it's everywhere. You're trying
there
to
are
tell-
mental health conditions
Right.
and disorders in every school throughout the United States.
Most people probably could use therapy. I can tell you.
Are you saying?
So what I'm saying is, I just wanna know how really prevalent this is throughout all of our districts here, because it seems to be the topic that everybody's most concerned about.
I would say what we should be most concerned about are depressed students
Yeah.
and suicide.
I agree.
And
For
that-
whatever
that is-
reason.
And that has been my biggest concern, within our buildings, which is why we track the data the way that we do.
Yep, thank you.
So if the school district is gonna hand me this packet, I'm gonna see those two forms, 2340 and 2345, and my first impulse is to fill those forms out and hand them back to the district.
They're opt-in, opt-out forms.
I'm sorry.
They're opt-in, opt-out.
Correct, but what I'm saying is, my first inclination, because the district handed me all these forms and these policies, is that I would return those two forms to the district. However, we stated that those forms would be given to Heritage Health. So at some point, we've gotta clarify that.
Right,
Yeah.
and
I
it
guess
doesn't have to be
I'm kind
a
of
new form that explicitly
confused.
states do not return to district or something.
I guess I thought that we were saying that there was an acknowledgement of this packet, but it was part of like the one-on-one with the counselor of just like, here is,
Yeah, I see it.
not counselor, therapist is
Yes.
better word, distinct, so it was, we're just saying, yes, you're giving that community resource doc, but then, some of those other things, because to Kim's point, you know, if we're not supposed to be privy to that information, like if a parent decides to opt into one or opt out of one, like it's not really supposed to be coming to us, and so that was part of this, like we listed, remember if you were, we initially didn't have the information packet, and then we just started listing like what that could be included, but I felt like the counselors at the school would give the information, and then the packet itself was be part of what Heritage is, just from a school, these are the school policies around this, and this is part of the conversation, but it was a conversation with the parent and the therapist, is how I thought we talked about it, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, except Heritage Health isn't going to go over our policies with the parent, because they're going to go over their policies with the parent. I thought, given that, I mean, I kind of hear two conflicting things being presented in the sense that, you know, when there is this referral, the counselor's actually talking to the parent or doing their best effort to communicate with the parent and say, look, we think there's a problem, yada, yada, yada. So I would think at that time, that counselor or teacher or whomever's doing the referral for services would be like, here's this packet of information, you know, this is this policy, this is what it's for, this is our policy here, and go on down the line so that we know we have informed our parents of what the district is offering, what is available to them, and that they're signing a receipt saying, I've received all this information. And that's staying at the school district, because if the parent ever comes back on the district and says, you never told me,
Right.
we don't have any evidence to prove, yes, we did.
So I think where we're conflicting is, remember initially if a parent, so I'm a parent and I'm concerned about my child, and so I call Renee at Timberlake and just say, hey, I'm having concerns. She's not directing me to Heritage Health, she's directing me to the resource with the list of everything.
The packet.
But I guess when we talked, that would be the first, because you wouldn't give any of this to the parent. The only time you would give the rest of B through H would be at the moment that it is Heritage Health is decided. Initially, it would just be the resource doc, and then if the parent came back and said, yes, I want to pursue Heritage Health, that's why, because they could go to any counselor and have nothing,
True.
so they wouldn't get any of those. So this is solely dependent on,
That's good.
A is for
Yeah.
everybody that asks for it.
Yeah.
B through H is specific to Heritage Health. So I guess that's why I thought that initial would be part of when they're meeting, you know, like maybe, you know, Renee is setting up the meeting time, and so I just thought it would be, it's not a big deal for Heritage Health to say, and if the counselor, the principal pops in and just say, here's some of our policies for you guys to be aware of or things to consider, but that's, the rest of that, you wouldn't give out to just anybody. It would solely be people that are pursuing Heritage Health.
That's a good point.
Because if it's outside of school, we don't have anything to do with that.
So it's not outside of school, but as soon as we hand them the community resource document, I'm assuming it has more than Heritage Health.
It has all of it. So that's what I'm
Right.
It has
saying,
a
like,
whole thing
Right.
about just.
B through H is specific to in school for us, but everything, most of the stuff on the resource doc is outside. I mean, it's
Right, I
it's
get that. That's what I'm
hotlines,
saying is
yeah.
because this is this. The reason we are doing this is so that we can say, they cannot come
Right.
back to us, like we've had parents that say, you told me, and we said, we
Right.
never told you that. Yes, you told me, and then their attorney comes and says, you told my client, and then we pay them money
Yeah.
because we can't prove we didn't
That's
tell
right.
them.
So
Anybody we give a community resource and we're saying, we're the mediator legally, and we said, go here, pick one, we don't care. We need them to sign and say, they got all this. So we can say, no, we gave you the policy, oh yeah, I'm sorry about that, but we did
I think it needs
inform
to be
you of
clarified though, that
the.
it's specific, it's specific to school-based mental health services. This isn't a policy of how we make mental health
Right.
referrals in our
Right.
school district, but it seems like it's turning into that. So I think we need to like, get back to what the intentional.
But when we give the referral, it has more than just Heritage Health on it, right?
Does
I mean,
the-
it
Right,
has
That's what Lynn's getting at.
it has other services
Yes.
on the paper, okay.
right, it's front and back. I think Craig brought it last time. It's-
Right, so if we're
That's what I
making
was
this,
just gonna
this is
ask.
for all encompassing mental health, that's what I'm saying, we're not saying go to Heritage Health, we're saying, here's a resource. And then in that, because here's the thing, if they take the document and they pick a resource and.
Can't
okay,
we just
well,
put on the
here's-
bottom of that form an asterisk that says, Lakeland School District is not responsible for, or we do not endorse.
There is something on there, it's
Already
already
is a
there.
disclaimer on
Then,
there that says we don't
legally, I
specifically
thought
endorse
that,
any
I
provider.
mean,
I
you
guess
could
so,
verify with Amy White if that's good enough.
I'm a visual, go ahead, I think you've been waiting to say something. Go ahead.
Okay. Then I guess what I don't understand is at some point, someone is picking who's going to be referred to Heritage Health, because that was what was presented to the board, that only the highest acuity and those on the lowest
Nobody's
income
picking.
spectrum.
We share information with anybody that wants the information. We don't determine the eligibility for Heritage Health, and I don't want people
Well, then
to
that's
have
a
the whole-
conflict,
I-
because
I
that
don't
we
want-
were
I
told
don't want
one
people
way and the
to-
other.
We don't determine eligibility for any agency or any service, whether it's our nurse saying, I think you have an infection, you need to go see your doctor. I don't know if the doctor's gonna prescribe an antibiotic or if they're gonna think there's a problem, but it's within our professional scope to provide information on local resources. We don't dictate any agency services.
Right.
Okay, but why was it presented that it's only the highest acuity that goes to Heritage Health, and that's why we need Heritage Health here?
You asked what our focus was, and our focus was on trying to bridge the gap for services for students that can't make appointments outside of school hours. Heritage Health, in addition to that, we wanted additional data on how many high acuity students are waiting. So if Heritage Health we get two referrals. We get a release of information for two parents at the exact same time. And I have a student that's functioning okay in school but is dealing with a transition issue. Their parents are going through a separation. And I have a student who was just hospitalized at KBH and is actively suicidal. Heritage Health decides out of the two that they get at the exact same time who they're gonna treat. That is the same for any service provider in this area, including rapid counseling. We don't dictate that. I want to make that very clear, and I've already stated this multiple times in previous board meetings. And
I wasn't getting I know we're not saying you have to go here because we would have to foot the bill. This is just a release of liability for the district.
We have a liability clause in the MOU. So my suggestion is if we're gonna do this, it needs to be it needs to be school-based counseling services, and it needs to be if they are enrolling in services.
Yeah, the district still won't be covered. Even with the little asterisk, the district hasn't been covered. Because since I've been on the board, we've already went through that. The district is not covered. I'm telling you, we're not covered.
Not covered
We pay.
in what way?
And liability, if the parent comes back and we cannot prove that we did not tell them to go there, which I know we didn't. I know we told them, here's a choice kind of thing. But that wasn't
I'm not saying we shouldn't
Yeah.
give them an informational packet. I'm saying we need to give the informational packet and have the receipt of confirmation of them getting it.
Right.
For students that are getting services with whoever that may be in the school setting, not just anybody that's asking me for information.
So are you saying that getting that form needs to come to us, that signature form, not to Heritage Health?
No, what Heather is saying is, I'm a parent, I'm a scenario person, so I'm gonna walk through this. I'm a parent, I call Renee, my Zachary's struggling, right? And she gives me this resource, the community resource with a list of everything. Then I as a parent decide, am I calling a hotline, am I seeing a doctor, whatever I'm doing, maybe I don't need, it's not mental health, maybe it's food, maybe it's housing, maybe it's clothing, whatever, all of that is kind of included. And so let's just say I decide, and then I want to know more about Heritage Health. And at that point is when I was under the impression, we talked about this, is that then because now I've said I want to pursue Heritage Health. We can't dictate per se if Heritage Health, but then as you're pursuing Heritage Health, here's the information. That's what I thought.
But what you're implying then is that the parent's coming back to the district saying, I want to go to Heritage Health, help me get connected. What she's saying is, no, we just give this source, and where they go, they go.
I was thinking
but
after
it's
they
here,
talk
and that's the way it is.
That's where they're moving forward. Then at some point we give them that packet of, when you're pursuing this, this is from a district standpoint. But if I'm a parent and I decide to do something not related to the school, that packet is not relevant to me.
Right.
And kids I think we already talked about this, could be going to Heritage Health outside of school hours.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, on what you're saying, you might, I guess maybe we're just seeing it different ways, but your kid needs counseling, you might say, hey, I know these people at this one, I'm going to use this one, so then you never ever ever have to go past A. Or you can call Heritage Health and they happen to have a time and a place that you can take your kid to. You still don't have to go past A. But if you choose, hope and ask, do you have time? I don't know, did they ask you?
When it's school-based,
They told me there was they could get Ember in, at school, yes.
Okay.
Did you go back to the counselor and say, hey?
Mm-mm.
So once you got the community resource,
Yeah.
you were on your own,
Yeah.
and then you're receiving services within the district without the district having any protection upon itself, knowing that you have been made informed of the district's stance
That's where we have to
on
figure out
mental
where-
Now,
health
she knew
providers.
that I was seeing, cause I went back to her and told her, followed up.
Mhm.
But yeah, but I don't think that people would have to follow up. I mean,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
That's so somewhere we have to have that
Right.
bridge that.
Right, I don't know where that would,
But Heritage,
Need to catch
Heritage
it.
Health informs the school that they're going to be seeing the child.
that's true,
That's
because
in the
they have
MOU.
to, she has to be pulled from a class.
At that point, the
Yeah.
school is notified,
Yeah,
right?
I suppose.
And so then at that point, maybe that's when B through whatever it is, H or whatever. is
Who
needed.
knows at the school that my child is being seen at the school?
Just whoever the parent signed the release of information for.
I mean, I know she's polled
Yeah. So
from
the-
a
the
class,
school-
but,
The school counselor and.
okay,
And the therapist. and-
okay.
The principal
But
would
they
always
don't.
know from a safety standpoint.
And they don't share with teachers.
Right, no,
They call
and
it
does the
in-
office
in-
staff doesn't know, even though she's pulled, I mean,
Unless the only way that anybody's gonna have any specific information about the kiddo is if the parent authorized that.
There's so much movement
If they're
happening.
going to the front office, to meet the student,
Mhm.
I mean, they're gonna know who the student is, but all of our admin assistants have privileges to be able to view, our students' like mental health records, and they're have to uphold the, for the standards and everything else.
Section 2.1E of the MOU states, Lakeland Joint School District must know where students are at all times. Provider must share the student name, date of birth, and when they will receive on-site services and by whom. So, Lakeland Joint School District is notified by, in this case, Heritage Health,
mhm,
which student, date of birth, who they're seeing, and when they're seeing it.
yeah.
So they're notified, and I would say then at that first notification, that's when this B through whatever it is, H is handed to the parent, because now we know it's on site,
Mhm.
right? And I agree, if it's B through H and I'm taking my kid to whichever counselor I want, one, it's none of the district's damn business, and it's off site.
Well, and it's irrelevant, that's
And
irrelevant, yeah.
sometimes the information is that parents have sought it out and contacted Heritage Health, and they're saying, I'm having a hard time getting into a therapist, and Heritage Health informs them that we have a school-based therapist, so that has happened too, where they sought that resource.
Sure,
And then
the other way
I
around.
mean, but it happens too with other
Mhm.
psychiatric issues where we're not always necessarily informed.
Yeah,
I mean, eventually
doctors
at some point-
refer,
at some point we
CPS
will be, but we're not
refers.
always the initial referral source.
Mhm.
Does that
So-
make sense?
With what Michelle was saying, then, at that point, when we get notification by either the parent or Heritage Health that that student's going to now be receiving services.
Mhm.
So then you have, okay, parent, this is our packet, this is all of our documents, and you need to sign that you received this. Is that what?
Yeah,
It
in order
is.
for your student or your child to receive
Yes.
mental health care on our
On
premises,
campus.
You have
Yep.
to sign this.
you get this, you get B through H, and we need I back, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
right?
That's what I.
And then you can commence
Mm-hmm.
with the services.
Does that cover the liability question? Because I'm not familiar with what case you're talking about that you guys have had trouble with, but I think
It
that's
would,
where
because
we-
that would be on the onsite.
So you're familiar with the lawsuits that we've lost?
I am not, no.
That's my question. is
But we're
what are the
covering,
lawsuits?
but we're covering the onsite, right? So B through H
Are
would
we
be the
covering what
onsite.
happened in our previous lawsuits?
So we've had lawsuits on this mental health care with parents that
What
receive
would,
information from us.
can you share any
I can't share everything,
information?
all I can tell you is this, is that we had a parent who in their mind had a bad experience. They went back to the school and they told the school, you told me I had to go here. Admin was called in, it was a big ordeal, then we said, no, we never told you you had to go there, but they believed they had to go there. And we had nothing saying, we didn't tell you that, but they were there, and the school was involved, blah, blah, blah. Guess what, the district's liable. We've had,
Was this for this specific service or a different service?
It was, there was multiple jumpings. It was a mental health issue.
You
So
can't,
mitigate
you
that.
can't think of a simple
The
decision.
thing was, is they got the regular, here's some services in the community kind of
Yeah,
thing.
so did that, so were you guys actually sued or was it just a grievance? Was it
No,
a
there was
complaint?
attorneys involved, but we didn't
Okay.
have to go to court.
Michelle
But we
is
haven't went to any court on
patiently
any
been
of the
waiting to
lawsuits we
say
passed.
something.
So we should add a release.
I'm gonna, Michelle has been waiting patiently to say something, so go ahead.
I can't see her from where I'm sitting, when Ramona's sitting forward.
What if, on the receipt of mental health information packet, because I do firmly believe that the packet with the community resource document on the top should be inclusive of all of that. And when they're signing off, the statement on the receipt is just stating that B through H is specific should you choose to pursue services on school grounds. So that bottom line, in the very beginning, out the gate, out the door, the district has done its due diligence to cover its butt and make sure that our parents have been informed. I don't think it really is detrimental to give them all of this information in the event that, you know, they go somewhere else. Okay, well, they've got this information. They can shred it.
Throw it away.
I don't care. But we have the receipt that we did our part in trying to connect them with community resources, knowing full well that we offer mental health services on school district property, and that we have given them the information pertinent to the fact that should they engage with services on the campus, we've already done our part.
So are you worried about sending too much ink
But
or
it's
giving too
specific
much
to school,
information?
yes.
I don't think you could ever give too
That's
much
fine.
I
information.
don't think giving too much information,
Yeah.
you might, are not worried about printer paper or
And I
anything.
think a
it's just-
receipt and then, yeah, receiving it is,
Technology.
Yeah,
makes
so
much,
then I-
acknowledgement makes much more sense than trying to.
So then I go back to my original question.
Mhm.
The district gives me all this information, and I see Form 2340 in the packet, because I'm reading through it, I do all my due diligence, and I see Form 2345, and I choose to opt in, opt out, whatever. Then my first thought is I need to return those forms to the district.
Okay.
But we said those two forms would get returned to Heritage Health for their files. So I think we need to clarify that and let the parent know where Form 2340 and Form 2345 should be returned to. If the
Right.
district doesn't want them, then
You just print.
That's
that
why it
on
needs to be a
form.
separate form, so you don't have to modify your existing forms and just list those policies and sign beside each one that you authorize discussions on.
I'm just saying it'll be a confusion point.
I agree.
So,
And then our teachers or counselors are gonna go, what am I supposed to do with this form?
I don't want us to be.
That's all. I mean, we just need to clarify where it goes and make sure the parents.
How many of those
Instead of
forms
modify
do
this
you
form,
think
I'd
you
say-
give out?
Or a new form.
That year.
Should go to the district office.
How many do you think it is?
It's hard to say.
The only problem Dave, with that is the district doesn't know what's happening inside that meeting, right? So they've
Well,
got
I'm
to
just saying for the
Yeah.
liability form,
I
that
don't
one
know
should
what
go to
the-
the district, because they're the ones
I
liable.
just,
wanna
I
We can ask
Well,
the
I-
board
I
what
really
they think
don't
the
put a
direction
big
should
warning
be.
letter.
We
Hey, you guys,
respect
we have
some
about 3
forms.
minutes left, and so I really try to run really efficient meetings and follow our norms. So our recap is this is going to go
I don't think we can
July.
have an opt-in, opt-out form.
No,
This
we'll
is gonna
modify
go
it.
to the board July 10th for some feedback. It's also, the attorney has access to this and the MOU. She's gonna give me feedback, so at our next policy and or at the board meeting, depending on the time wise, we'll get access to this. I will do a things to consider that's part of that packet, and then we'll all come back together and talk about next steps from either Amy White and or from the board meeting.
Because I'm worried about us having more liability if they're saying yes or no, I don't want this information. We don't know anything about what's happening in those counseling sessions, and now I'm responsible for.
So we'll talk through that, and that'll be part of the discussion.
Plus not to, I mean, it's a logistical nightmare too.
Right. So we are stopping this meeting. Michelle's gonna stop recording. So thank you.